Hey everyone, normally when you see me filming a video like this, there's a dog or two in front of me, and in a lot of my earlier YouTube videos and some TikTok videos, that dog was my boy Rocky. But I'm walking alone right now. This video is a tribute and a goodbye to my dog Rocky. I put off sharing this news. Some of my close friends and many clients who knew him didn't even know until recently that I lost Rocky a couple of months ago. I was having trouble myself even processing it. It happened so fast and was unexpected. To be honest, it took me a while to get to the point where I could talk about it and write about it and finally make this video tribute. This is a pond we used to walk by pretty much every day. I've lost dogs I love, but they were older and sick, and I was at least a little more prepared when I had to let them go. But man, Rocky, he was taken way too soon, as a lot of things we love sometimes are. As I said, Rocky appeared in many of my YouTube videos, and in fact, I still have some footage of him with a dog named Hank coming up in a future video on my channel. But he had been absent from some videos recently, and a few people kept asking, where's Rocky? So I felt I needed to tell his story. And I want to thank my sweet friend, Sarah Wallace. She has an inspirational YouTube channel called Your Ideal Self. I urge you to check it out. Sarah prompted me ever so gently that I needed to tell Rocky's story for me, and I needed to let people know what he meant to me and what happened to him. I miss you, Rocky, my road dog. In February of this year, I started fostering Rocky, a Schnauzer Yorkie mix, after one of his owners died and the other one moved to an apartment and couldn't really take care of him very well. Rocky's owner asked if I would take him for a while, as he had really been her husband's dog and she had trouble walking and Rocky was underfoot all the time, following her from room to room. Plus, he needed more exercise. I thought it would just be temporary, and in fact, it started out as me taking him for one weekend to give his owner a break and to give Rocky some exercise and a change of pace. Then the next weekend, he came to hang out with me again, and it became 4 days instead of 2, and the temporary foster part didn't last long because after the next weekend with me, he just stayed. I gave him a haircut with clippers in the backyard. I took him to get a new harness and collar and a name tag with my contact information, and I had myself a new companion. Rocky captured my heart pretty quickly. He was laid back, intelligent, enjoyed all animals and people, and loved to go for long walks with me. He became my work and travel buddy over the summer, going with me everywhere, to pet sits and dog walks, and even a late summer trip to Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Mount Rushmore, and Devil's Tower. He would go with me to houses where the dogs weren't necessarily known to like other strange dogs, and Rocky would put them at ease. He would just stroll in, find a water bowl, help himself, and then look around as if to say, okay, new friend, what's happening in your world? They'd give him a sniff and he'd wander out into the backyard, as cool as can be, and they'd just look at me like, okay then, and all was good. Rocky taught a puppy named Hank that going for a walk was not scary and he could leave the house and head down the street, and Hank would just follow Rocky right on down the sidewalk. He follows Rock. Oh my gosh. This is awesome. Rocky would even go to houses with cats, and they weren't sure what to think of him at first, but he didn't bark at them or chase them, and they figured out he was an okay dude. We have a pond near our house, and there were some geese who had a nest and eventually hatched some goslings. We'd pass them every day, and slowly they got used to us. I took some pictures of the baby geese coming over to check out Rocky, and he just stood there and let them. He wanted to be everybody's friend, and he really was. At the end of the summer, for some reason I got a wild hair that we needed to take a road trip. It was a week before Labor Day, and I knew business was going to pick up after that, so I thought we better get away while we can. I packed up the Honda with food and water for me and for Rocky. I built us a bed in the back with couch cushions and old sheets and blankets, and we hit the road. Some videos from this trip are available on my YouTube channel. We drove from Kansas City, Missouri to Omaha, across Nebraska to Wyoming, through Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone, to Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower, the Badlands of South Dakota, and then back down along the Iowa-Nebraska border to home again. Rocky and I really had the time of our lives. I started calling him Rocky the Road Dog. We found campsites along the way, some free, some cheap, some not so cheap. We even slept in a Walmart parking lot one night. We hiked along waterfalls and checked out tons of rest areas. He was the perfect travel buddy. He loved to ride in the car and look out at the mountains or the trees. Rocky's even enjoying the view, isn't he, Rocky? Yeah, you are. Look at you. Look at you. We visited other dogs at rest areas and campsites. He was always making friends, always living life to the fullest. And looking back, I'm so glad I had that wild hair and we took that trip. I don't think Rocky had ever been that far from home and hadn't had such an adventure. Rocky the Road Dog had more of an adventure than some people ever do. Just before our trip, I decided to create a YouTube channel to feature dog breed info, traveling with dogs, training tips, and etc. We started by making videos for TikTok and made quite a few while on our trip. We drove all the way across Wyoming, and this is the little area that Rocky's allowed to be in. Once we got back, I jumped into the YouTube world, and Rocky was prominent in my early videos. Even when I was featuring different breeds of dogs, he would go with me to walk dogs, and we'd film the walks and talk about the different breeds. I wanted to make Rocky a TikTok and YouTube star. Darin, the dog guy, here with Rocky the Road Dog. And Rocky has some exciting news for everyone. I had ordered a DNA test for Rocky in August, and one of our first TikTok and YouTube videos was to share the results that he was officially a Schnorkie, a Schnauzer Yorkie mix. Around this time, I obtained his medical records and found out he was due for annual vaccinations and a checkup in December. In the meantime, he seemed healthy and happy and robust. He was estimated to be around 8 years old, and I figured we would have many years and travel adventures ahead of us. What I didn't know was that Rocky was becoming diabetic, or had been, and it was getting worse. His previous owner hadn't mentioned anything about that, and I'm not sure if they were very diligent about his health care anyway. I started noticing Rocky was emptying the water bowl a little more, and I was filling it up more often, but we were going on lots of walks each day, and it was still pretty warm outside, so for whatever reason, I didn't see it as anything to worry about, and he was always ready to go for a car ride, to visit dogs, or go for 2 to 3 walks a day with me around the neighborhood. Just never seemed to complain or act like anything was wrong. One night, after we'd been on a few dog walks, Rocky threw up and didn't want to eat anything, but if you have dogs, you know that sometimes happens. They get into something or they have a little bug and it will go away. The next day, when he still wouldn't eat, I tried to give him some chicken and rice, hoping it would help his stomach, but he wasn't interested. Then he started acting very lethargic. He would go and hide under the bed. We'd go outside and he'd hide in a corner of the yard and he had no energy to go walking. So the next morning I called around trying to get him into a vet, but was having trouble finding any available appointments due to COVID. Many were working on a limited capacity. Rocky was now acting very lethargic and wouldn't eat or drink. I finally talked to a vet I'd previously relationship with, and I pretty much insisted that someone needed to see Rocky that day. They told me the best they could do was have me drop him off and they'd try to run some blood work and x-rays in between other patients, and they'd let me know what they found out. The vet called me after a few hours and said they'd finally had a chance to check out Rocky and wanted me to know that it was not good news. Rocky'd gone into a diabetic shock and had something called ketoacidosis. He needed to be on intravenous fluids and get some insulin to help straighten out his blood sugar levels. His electrolytes were low, his BUN levels were high, his white blood cell was super elevated. His blood work was really bad. The vet told me he had likely got some type of infection and inflammation had caused a stress event that made the ketoacidosis flare up, which caused a metabolic acidosis all over his body, and that's why he was so lethargic and feeling terrible. His insides were on fire. So I heard the diabetic part and I thought, okay, I can deal with that. Let's put him on fluids and I'll give him insulin in the future. But there was more. During an ultrasound, they found his pancreas was enlarged. X-rays found tumors on various organs in his body. His spleen was enlarged. His right kidney was abnormal. I said, how did I not notice this? He seemed fine. The vet told me that dogs compensate and don't always let you know, and will compensate up to a point when they can't any longer. The vet told me he would need surgery to go in and try to get out all the masses they'd seen on x-ray, but before they could even consider surgery, he would need to be on fluids, possibly for a few days, and she said he was in such a bad state that he might not even make it through the night. And even with surgery, they might not be able to get out all the masses they were seeing. He was just in really bad shape. I have to say goodbye today. He has really bad diabetic infection, and he has a tumor that they found on his pancreas, and he has a mass in his belly that they don't know what that is, and he's in a lot of pain, and we're just spending some time together before I have to go in and let him go. And he's just doesn't have a lot of energy or anything. I'm just gonna take him and put him on my lap now. But I just wanted him to know that he's just been the best dog, and he was such a good travel partner for me. Such a good time. We just went on a road trip, and we got to see Yellowstone, and he saw bears out the window of the car, and he hiked around and campgrounds and met people and dogs, and he's been going on 3 walks a day with me, and he goes to visit other dogs with me, and he's always so sweet to everybody. He's just been just the best guy. Just the best guy, Rocky. The vet kept reassuring me that there wasn't anything I could have done differently, and even if we controlled the diabetes, the tumors were there and weren't going away, and Rocky unfortunately didn't have long to live no matter what at this point. She said I would be saving him a lot of pain if I just let him go that day. I was absolutely in shock. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I said I wanted to spend some time with him, and could we set the appointment for a couple of hours later? She said yes, we could do it at the end of the afternoon. So I drove up to the vet's office, and they let me take him outside for a while. We sat in the grass, and I cried, and I held him, and I shot some of this video, and I kept telling him what an amazing dog he was and how perfect he'd been for me and for my life. In one of the videos on YouTube, Rocky's sitting up tall and straight, looking forward, watching the road, seeing what was coming up next. And that's the way I wanted to remember him. I thought our trip to Wyoming was the first trip of many we would take together. I even imagined we might convert a van and travel all around the United States, just Darin the dog guy and Rocky the road dog. So I carried him to the car, and I put him on his makeshift bed in the seat where he'd rode on our trip. For some reason, I just wanted to see him there one more time and let him experience that feeling again, riding in that spot where he looked out the window and saw mountains and lakes and trees and Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower, elk and bison and even a bear at one point. Then after some time in the car, I carried him to a shady spot and laid back with him on my chest. He closed his eyes and took a nap while I continued to tell him how much I loved him and how much joy he'd brought me this year and how much I was going to miss him and how sorry I was that he was sick and that I hadn't known. At that moment, I remember also feeling very happy that I'd had him the 8 months or so that I did. Had I not taken him in, Rocky would have spent this year in a small apartment with barely any time outside or any exercise at all. With me, I believe Rocky had the best last year he could have hoped for. Long walks every day, sometimes with just me, sometimes with other dog friends, car rides, a fenced-in backyard to explore whenever he wanted, and a wonderful week-long adventure with his best buddy to see things he never would have seen. I had 2 Yorkies, Ellie and Riley, who lived with me for 16 and 17 years, and they were my girls. I never knew it was possible to love anything that much. They inspired me to start my business, Happy Dogs Pet Services. I lost Ellie in 2016, and it broke my heart. And then when I lost Riley a couple of years later, it was so hard, and I was sad and depressed for so long. I told myself I'd never get another dog because I didn't want to experience the pain of that loss ever again. I didn't think my heart could take it. I loved Ellie and Riley more than anything, and thought I could never love another dog as much as I loved them. And besides, I see dogs every day in my business, taking care of other people's pets. I wasn't expecting to grow to love a dog so much in less than a year, but if you'd met Rocky, you'd know why I never stood a chance trying not to fall in love with him. He was the perfect dog for me and for my life. This is Mr. Rockman. He's having a kind of rough day. Aren't you, buddy? You're not feeling very good, are you? But I'm just gonna sit here and love on you. Just gonna sit here and love on you. I'm really sorry you're hurting, buddy. I talked about this already a little bit, but Rocky was a perfect dog ambassador. When you have a job like mine where you see different cats and dogs and birds and guinea pigs and pets of every kind every day, you need a canine companion who's not only good with all animals, but good to all animals. You need a laid-back, calm, confident, upbeat dog who puts everyone and everything at ease. Rocky was all of those things, and he was such a sweet, loving dog. So I said goodbye to my buddy that day, and I'm saying goodbye to him again right now. And I'm so happy that he is in a lot of my early videos because in a way he lives on forever, and I'm so glad that I can just look back and remember our trips and all our dog walks and everything. Thank you, Rocky. Rocky the road dog. Best dog ever. Such a good boy, Rocky. I used to tell Ellie that she was the best one, but you really were. Good boy. I didn't think I'd ever love another dog after I lost my Ellie and Riley. You were so good with all the other dogs, and you were so good to travel with. You were nice to everybody, and you loved seeing all the other dogs and all the people. And I'm so glad we got to take our road trip together. Just wanted you to have one more time riding in your seat where you went on the road trip with me. Good boy. Rocky, I couldn't have asked for a better travel partner. I'm so glad we got to go see Yellowstone together, and you saw Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower and all that, and you were just having such a good time. Camping out. I think you loved camping, doing all that walking. I wish we would have had more time to do more camping. And I'm just always going to remember what a good boy you were, and I'm so glad that I got to spend this time with you. And thank you for being in my life, buddy.